Assassin's Creed Odyssey is quite possibly the best the series has seen to date. That infamous stealth gameplay mixed with a stunning recreation of ancient Greece, a brilliant story, welcome RPG mechanics and a boatload of content. It's a home run on paper, and at times it certainly feels like it. However, despite loving the game at one moment, I often found myself less than enamoured only a few minutes later. If you've played last year's Origins, you'll know what to expect here. Odyssey takes a very familiar feeling format. It does, however, improve and double down on a myriad of areas seen from that title. Right from the get-go, Odyssey asks you to make an all-important choice: Cassandra or Alexios. Whilst whichever you choose doesn't really affect the game's overall story or gameplay mechanics, it is a welcome change for the series. Personally, I found Cassandra's voice actor to be both brilliant and endearing, whilst I couldn't really say the same about Alexios. However, your preference may vary. The game also allows you to select from exploration or guided modes early on, something new to the series. Guided provides precise objective markers whenever you accept an NPC's quest. Exploration, however, is somewhat of a change, forcing you to converse with the game's characters and discover more clues about the quest objective's location. Admittedly, these clues are pretty straightforward, for example west of a specific region near a certain landmark. However, it is a welcome change. The game recommends exploration mode as the way to play, and I can certainly vouch for that. Whilst it doesn't result in Breath of the Wild levels of exploration, it does encourage you to explore and take in the game's gorgeous world. Odyssey also doubles down on other RPG mechanics first established in Origins. Conversation options are now a thing, along with actual decisions. These decisions genuinely do result in repercussions at times too. It's not quite Mass Effect, but it's great to see more impact for your actions in the game. Whilst Cassandra is a brilliant and likeable character, I found that more often than not, dialogue choices were purely just to delve deeper into a quest's objectives, or ask questions as opposed to sculpting Cassandra's personality as you see fit.
By the gods, woman! I said spare me the details!
Also, the game's voice acting is solid throughout. There's certainly some dodgy sounding accents here and there, along with some funky lip syncing, but it's mostly a non-issue.
My ship and my beard!
Combat in Assassin's Creed Odyssey lightly builds upon what the team has already established with Origins. You'll still use the back buttons to chain together heavy and light attacks. Whilst it's still a better combat system than that seen in older Assassin's Creed titles, I actually feel like the changes are somewhat of a step backwards from Origins. I mean, hear me out. Player shields have been removed. Instead, dodges are the focus here. Time you dodge just before an enemy attacks results in a time slowing effect, where an enemy is vulnerable. If you hit LB and RB or L1 and R1 just at the right time, you'll parry an enemy's attack, opening them up for counter blows. Unfortunately though, this timing window of the parry, combined with the double back button prompt, is just downright clunky. Not only that, but enemies have turned into health sponges in Odyssey. Despite the removal of player shields, enemies still have shields aplenty, forcing you to dodge, parry and shield break your way through them. Paired with the high health counts, battles sometimes just feel less fun and more of a chore. Initially I started out on hard mode and I quickly noticed that the game was mostly just cranking up the health pool of enemies to make the game even harder. The game's difficulty options therefore just feel kind of cheap in my opinion. Odyssey is heavily level focused throughout. Enemies and side quests scale up to your level so you never feel too powerful. However, the negative result of that is that damage is also extremely level based. Fighting enemies that are 1 or 2 levels above you generally results in some significant cheesing required or patience to come out on top. It also means that higher level and sometimes stronger enemies can't be stealth killed in one attempt like older Assassin's Creed titles. All of these issues are exacerbated by the game's Mercenary system. Shadow of War fans will notice the similarities here. The game's Mercenary system is somewhat of a light version of the Nemesis system. As you commit crimes, also known as doing your job as an assassin, your notoriety builds. As the Mercenary meter fills, enemies will place a hit on your head, and the longer you leave that untouched whilst continuing to kill enemies, the more mercenaries will be sent after you. These mercenaries all have strengths and weaknesses, much like the Nemesis system. So for example, some might be weak to fire, or others might be enraged upon low health, etc. In theory, it sounds great. The Nemesis system is absolutely superb in Shadow of War. I'm actually surprised that more games haven't taken up the system. Sadly though, it becomes quickly apparent that this system is little more than a consistent pain in your backside. The mercenaries somehow have the magical ability to know your location no matter where you are in the world. I'll be in the middle of a stealth sequence taking over a tough base, only for that goddamn horn to sound and a tough high leveled mercenary comes running into the area. These mercenaries also generally have hefty health pools and love to get involved in the action. Sure, you can head out to find the enemy which placed a hit on your head, dispatching him or her, which lowers your mercenary's notoriety meter, but the task of doing so is often a job in itself because those enemies are located in fortified locations. It just ends up feeling like busy work or an irritating distraction. You can pay off these bounties with in-game gold, but then it just feels like the player's financial progress is being punished for simply playing the game. Despite these negatives though, there is a hell of a lot to love about Assassin's Creed Odyssey. The story is undoubtedly one of the best and most intriguing the series has seen in a long time. Traversal also has always been a strong point of the series, and Odyssey is no different, it just works. Cassandra can jump, climb and navigate around the game's world with smooth ease. It is simply great stuff and it deserves real credit considering the vast scale of the world. And that world, my god, Assassin's Creed Odyssey is a huge game. Words can't really express just how large the game's gorgeous world is. It's quite possibly my favourite setting seen in a series so far. Greece is just absolutely stunning. I found myself jumping into the photo mode and snapping screenshots constantly. You see that mountain over there? You actually can climb it. It is downright incredible. Navigating the world is a joy too, thanks to the series' return to doubling down on naval traversal. The ship combat and control is arguably even better than that seen in Black Flag. Ubisoft have clearly streamlined the ship controls here, with your galleon making tight turns at ease. The focus is on fun rather than realism, and that is the right choice in my opinion. You can even recruit new ship captains throughout the world by knocking out enemies rather than assassinating them. Oh, and there's a full suite of ship upgrades thrown in for good measure too, as if you didn't already have enough to focus on. Sailing the seas is pure video game bliss. Dolphins swim beside you whilst whales crash alongside the boat. It's just so damn good. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is an absolutely beautiful game in almost every way. I played the game on an Xbox One X and the game's visuals were simply incredible. From the awesome vistas, magnificent view distance, delightful waterfalls and alluring seas, this is one of the best looking open worlds I have ever had the privilege of exploring in a video game. There's no loading screens between areas either, so you simply hop on your ship and set sail across the oceans. It is just straight up impressive. The amount of content on offer here too is absolutely staggering. Odyssey is a long game. Sadly however, much like in Origins, I actually personally felt like the game's scale, whilst super impressive visually, ended up damaging the game overall. It actually feels like there's too much to do. Rather than a whole suite of okay side content, I'd much rather have far less fantastic content. Granted, if you're looking for a game offering 110% value for money, Odyssey is certainly it. Now, there has been a lot of talk online about the game's XP system. Yes, Odyssey does allow you to purchase a lifetime 50% XP booster for a small sum. How kind of them. Thereby, you can bypass some of the frustration often seen with the game's leveling mechanics. By leveling faster, you're less likely to run into irritatingly stronger enemies, and you'll have an easier time assassinating foes in one hit, and of course you can mainline the game's story missions, which are undoubtedly the best content in the game. However, throughout my tens of hours of the game, I never really felt once that it was obvious malicious intent by Ubisoft here, as many have suggested online. Instead, I actually feel like people should be focusing on the game's scale as being more of an issue. The game's mechanics were less designed to give the players the nudge nudge wink wink to buy an XP booster in my opinion. And alternatively, the game's scale actually exists more so just to keep those players playing. Having to run side missions and explore more of the game's content to increase my strength so that I'm able to take on a tougher mission isn't something new in video games, or necessarily related to microtransaction nastiness. In fact, that's pretty standard in a lot of RPGs. Making games has admittedly become expensive, and Ubisoft definitely do not make Assassin's Creed titles on the cheap, that is for sure. Players which stick around for longer are just obviously more likely to purchase more additional content for the game, whether it be microtransactions or, more importantly, DLC. I personally wouldn't necessarily call that malicious, it's just business. However, I do feel like the game is actually worse off because of that scale, and it is a downright shame. The game's side content is an improvement over Origins, but there's still a lot of chaff here. While some side missions do have amusing setups, dialogue and characters tied to them, the actual tasks at hand are often just uninspiring. In fact, a big problem in Odyssey in general is the game's formulaic nature. If you've played an Assassin's Creed title, you know the core gameplay loop here. Whilst Ubisoft are obviously adding a bunch of welcome mechanical additional layers to the series, I'd love to see them take some more risks with the actual core gameplay loop. There's very few kind of set piece moments or standout missions. Although the game's story missions are undoubtedly more interesting than the others, there's kind of little surprise here. The game's world itself is impressively grandiose, and it is also extremely beautiful, but I'd still love to see more surprises, more things popping out at you, more unexpected elements and character injected into it. In many ways, Odyssey puts one step forward and another step partially backwards. I have no doubt that it is probably the best Assassin's Creed game to date overall. It's a much more realised vision of what the studio set out to achieve with Origins. I mean, the size alone is almost an achievement in itself. Despite my numerous criticisms and wishes for the series moving forward, it is a damn fun game, something which I wholeheartedly do not want to downplay. If you're a big fan of the series, you will find a lot to like here. And if this is your first Assassin's Creed title, then you are in for a serious treat. It is impossible not to acknowledge the impressive scale, polish and refinement shown in Odyssey. The team deserve every ounce of credit for what they've built here. Sadly, some questionable design decisions result in a mix of frustrating gameplay along with glimpses of monumental greatness. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is still a brilliant game with a mind-bogglingly large amount of content. It's not perfect, but it does provide plenty of brilliant moments. Be sure to like, share and subscribe for more content like this.